So you ready?
Yeah, as you're ready.
Awesome. Okay. So, hello, guys, and welcome back to the Notes and Quotes podcast. It's so good to have you guys here. If you're new here, welcome and welcome to the community. I'm really happy to have you here. And I'm especially happy to have you here today because we have a guest. I know you can see our guest over here beaming, and I'm so excited to have you on. So, before I jump into the conversation, which I'm so excited to talk about with Kristen, I'm going to give you guys a little introduction into who he is. So, this is Kristen Greaves. He is a professional, inspirational keynote speaker, author, and entrepreneur. He specializes in teaching youth and young professionals on how to live resilient, purpose driven lives using his Empower framework. Recently, he's been nominated for Motivational Speaker of the Year at the Guyana People's Choice Awards. He's been featured locally, regionally, and internationally, sharing his stories and insights with thousands through national television, magazines, speaking engagements at various stages and for organizations and conferences. And he's also the author, how cool is that, of A New Look at Life, Journey into Your Best Life. And he has an upcoming book called Transform Your Life. It's time to take your life to the next level. And these books focus on guiding readers to lead purpose driven lives and walk confidently in their purpose and reach their full potential. And I think that's something that everybody wants. So that is one of the many reasons why I'm so excited to have Kristen on the podcast today. So Kristen, how are you doing?
Hey,
Welcome.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited, but I'm also hot because I am now in Barbados back again.
Yes.
Just came down from the UK, and let me just say, this is one of those conversations that needed to happen today because today was like one thing after the other. Let me just say.
Mm.
So I don't know if people can tell. I hope they can't tell, but I don't have my mic today because lost the cord at the last place I was shooting and then couldn't soundproof the room, all of these different
Oh.
things. Yeah, so, you know, one of those things. So I need this empower conversation
Yeah,
today.
it will
I'm
get a
all
little bit
good.
more heated.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good conversation for sure. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. So, as we do with all of our guests on the Notes and Quotes podcast, we always let the guests choose the quote of the day. So, Kristen, do you want to tell us what your quote is today?
Yes. So the quote for today is this: Your circumstances do not determine your destiny, only your daily decisions do. Now, I'm going to read that one more time. Your
Please.
circumstances do not determine your destiny, only your daily decisions do. And the whole aim, well, that's actually an original quote, and we will dive into kind of like the backstory a little bit later into how that quote came to mind. But the whole aim of this quote is to help persons to see, look, regardless of where you come from, regardless of your background, regardless of your situation maybe at home right now, it doesn't get to determine how far you can go. And I don't know about you, Naomi, but I know a lot of times we as human beings, we think, well, because we may come from a certain background, whether it is we come from a dysfunctional family, whether it is we come from a family that came up with poverty, struggling with addiction, whether it's a past mistake that you have made in the past, we often think that, well, maybe those things disqualify us from maybe having the future that we would desire, or maybe should stop us from becoming the person we are capable or destined, so to speak, to be.
Yeah.
And the reality is, no, those things do not disqualify you. Only your daily decisions make the future, make and determine your destiny, because our decisions are the building blocks or the foundation, so to speak, on which our future is built. The reality is our future will simply be a reflection of what we choose to do today. Similarly, like today, our lives is a reflection of what we did in the past. So it's like our daily decisions is what makes us. So if we want a different future, if we want a different outcome to show up in our lives in the future, then guess what? We have to start by making different choices today. So our circumstances don't determine our destiny, only our daily decisions do.
Wow, I love that. I love that. I love that because it's so true that, your daily decisions really are the building blocks of everything in your life. It's really easy to set goals and just think of them as far out things, but it's step by step with your daily decisions that determine your outcome. And I really love that quote. So we've heard your bio, we know about all of your incredibleness and stuff, but I kind of want to know a bit about you and your story from you, because I feel like it's always more impactful to hear people's stories from them as opposed to if you're reading it or hearing it from someone else. It always just has a little bit of a different impact. So I really want to hear about your story, maybe just a short synopsis on how you got to where you are today and what inspired you and what's guided you to get from maybe, young, I don't know, 10-year-old Kristen to Kristen today, who's an author, entrepreneur, speaker, all of these things.
So what really inspires me, or what inspired me really, is the transformational journey that I have been on. Like, as you said just now, like, the person I was when I was 10 or 15 isn't the same person I am now at this age, even though I'm still young. It's a whole transformational journey. So what really inspired me was the path that I've been on. So what many people may not know about me is that my father was absent from my life. And for a long time, I felt, wow, maybe I wasn't enough. I felt like maybe there was no worth or there was no purpose for my life, because guess what? The head person I thought should have been there to love me. In other words, the parent, one of your parents, the head person you would think should be there to love you or to help shape you into the person you were called to be. That was the head person who wasn't there. So for a long time, I felt, and maybe even some of your audience listening can relate to this kind of feeling where you feel like, man, I'm not enough. And as a result, I started to fail academically for some years. And even as we may sometimes think, well, baby, because we have failed, that we are a failure, and we kind of ascribe that identity to us. And for a long time, I felt, because, yeah, it was the first situation where my father wasn't there, and then also failing academically, felt like it was a failure. Then a little while after, started struggling with addictions, and then had different anger and temper issues. And because of all those things, I felt like for a long time, well, maybe I would never amount to anything.
Mm,
Maybe I would never become anything significant, or I can do anything significant with my life, all because of my circumstances again. And one of the things that I did during that season of life, thinking that maybe it would help me, or maybe it would help me to cope, one of the things I did in that season was trying to change myself in order to fit in with others. Because
mm,
somehow I thought, well, maybe if I was to change myself and I fit in with others, and maybe if I'm accepted by others, then maybe that will give me the feeling of love that I was looking for. Maybe it will
okay,
give me the
yeah.
feeling of worth or value that I was looking for. But if I can keep it 100 with you, that did not help. That just made things worse. And even though maybe persons who may have gone to school with us, many
Yeah.
persons may look at me have thought, well, maybe everything was alright for Christine. Like, because I was always the type of child that would always put on a smile. I was always a child that would always show up and be smiling, but it's like on the inside, I felt broken in that season of my life. I felt like, wow, like how if you took a glass and you drop it on the ground, it shatters into pieces, or maybe if you took some paper and you cut it up, it's like that's how I felt. I don't remember one day, literally, I tell you, no, like, I remember one day at what I consider my rock bottom. In other words, my lowest moment, for those of you who may not understand what that term means. I remember one day I was sitting at the corner of my room, of my bedroom. I was sitting on the floor and I was crying. It was literally like tears were just streaming out of my face. In fact, if I could be honest with you, I was bawling. Yeah, I was just like really crying, and I was like just very tired of how things were happening. And I literally said out loud, I am just sick and tired of how things have been going. I'm just tired of how my life has been what has been happening. I'm tired of how my life has been going. And I literally said out loud, it is time for a change. Like how some people would say like they're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that for me. I was just like so frustrated. It was like I just couldn't take it anymore, and I told myself it's time for a change. And it's kind of like how some people say, well, they had a come to Jesus moment. Well, that's kind of like what I had. It was like I was just ready for a change in my situation, and it was around that time when those words came to my mind. My circumstances will never determine my destiny. I felt
Yeah.
almost as if literally like the creator of the universe literally came and looked at me and said, son, your circumstances will never determine your destiny. And I want you to understand this. Before then, I never heard those words before. Before then, I never knew, I never heard anyone said anything like that. So
Mm-hmm.
it just came so clear in my mind. And it was from there on out that my healing journey started. Even at that time, I didn't even know what personal development was. I didn't even know that that was even a thing. But it was from there on out that I made a decision that each day I'm going to strive to be a little bit better than the
Mm-hmm.
person I was before, because my
Mm-hmm.
situation doesn't get to determine how far I go. So basically, to answer your question, having made it through or having navigated through that season of life, the thing that now drives me, the thing that now guides me each and every single day is that desire and the commitment I've made to myself, that I'm going to look back and I'm going to pull somebody else up. I'm going to look back and help somebody else up who may also be struggling, who may also feel like, well, their challenges are overwhelming them, and maybe because of their circumstances, that it disqualifies them from doing something great with their lives. And because I've made the commitment now to reach back and pull somebody else, that's not the thing that inspires me. That's not the thing that guides me. Whether I'm on stage in front of thousands of people, whether I'm in a room with just one, whether I'm writing a book or in front of camera lens like this, that's the
Mm-hmm.
thing that guides me. And then I think I can't remember if I think this was in your question as well, but another thing that guides me and one of the things that has brought me to where I am now is my faith. Now I know
Mm-hmm.
everyone has their own beliefs. I'm not here to tell anyone what to believe in. That's all everyone's choice. But as for me as a Christian, the thing that really guides me and keeps me grounded up is my faith. So hopefully that answers your question.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It answered it more than it just like it just made my question so much larger. I love that. I
Mhm.
love the response. And I could also hear the motivational speaker in you. It's just so empowering and I love that. How old were you when you said to yourself, you know what, it's time for a change and you started on your like your journey?
I think that was around 16 years old. I think it was
Wow.
somewhere around there. All I know is that we were in senior school at the time.
Yeah, so probably
Yeah.
probably between 16 and 18 or
16, maybe
sometime.
17, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I remember that being a very turbulent time, like for
Mm,
everybody, you know? I mean, anybody who's between 16 to 20, I think, is just such a time of self-development. And it can be either bad self-development or good self-development. And I think a lot of
true.
people don't really understand how to navigate that time because you don't really get that much guidance on how to navigate it besides, you know, like, I don't know, puberty and stuff like that where they teach you about that, but the emotional side of things I think is left
Yeah.
out a lot. And what I see even left out even more so is just your 20s and the experience of your 20s and the experiences of navigating such a turbulent time where it's like you're an adult but you're still kind of coming out of the, you know, withdrawals of being a kid and you're now thrust into the real world. You're no longer in school where
Mhm.
your path is set out for you, or you are in school but you're not sure what you want to do with your life. And it's just so hard to find purpose, I think, in your 20s. And I think one of the words that really defines your 20s is resilience because of all of the changes and disappointments and advancements that you have to go through. So what do you think resilience means for you in this period of life in your 20s?
What does resilience means for me? That's a good question. I would probably say this would be my own definition of resilience. And this is just my take on it. It could be right, it could be wrong. Who knows? But my take on resilience. I would define resilience as the ability to recognize the power which one already has over a given situation and then using that power to help you navigate through the adversity. That's my definition of resilience. Now, why do I say this? I say this because no matter what adversity, no matter the challenge that you, your listeners, no matter the challenge that I face, there there as much as it may seem bigger than us, is actually not bigger than us. Now, how do I know this? Because in every challenge we will ever face in life, there are always certain variables within our control.
Yeah.
So I'm going to play on what you said before not too long. So you remember when around the age when we were 16, 17, that was actually around the period of time when COVID came. That was,
Yeah.
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 And that was a serious challenge or a change which we all had to learn to navigate through. We had no control over that. We had no control over when it came. We couldn't just say, well, COVID leave and come back some other time. No, we had no control over that. But there were always things that we had within our control, like our mindset. How will we show up? What will we do? That's kind of like what I teach in my framework, the Empower framework. Is basically showing persons, hey, there are certain things within your power, so to speak, or within your control. Like as I said just now, your mindset, your habits. What will you do? What is the response now that you are going to? What's going to be your response, so to speak, to this challenge? So it's like, despite the challenges that we will ever face, there are always certain things within our control. So if I can use an analogy for you, if we think about a sailor or a captain of a ship, he or she doesn't have control over the wind. He or she doesn't have control over the strength of the wind, the direction of the wind. Neither does he or she have control over the inclement weather which may be around them. But guess what? He does have control over. He has control over the direction where he steers his ship. So he may not be able to control everything that's happening around him, but he can for sure control the direction where he steers his ship. And the same thing is true for us as human beings. We may not be able to control what's happening around us. We may not be able to control the disappointments, the setbacks, the hurts, the pain. We may not be able to control everything around us, but we always have control over certain things in our life. And the question that we should always ask ourselves is, what is going to be our response? What are we going to do? As I say to people, control the controllables, so to speak. It's like control what you can control. It's like you can't control every single thing in life, but there are always certain things within your possession that you can control. And as I say all the time, the only thing that we have complete control over is ourselves.
Yeah.
We only have control over ourselves. We cannot control every single thing around us. But we can for sure control ourselves. So we can control our mindset, our habits, our response, our attitude, how we show up, our obsession over growth and transformation. We have control over that. So what I want your listeners to always remember is that regardless of the challenge you're facing right now, you get to choose ultimately whether you will be a victim or whether you'll be a victor, all by your response.
So how do you use that response? So let's go back to the COVID thing.
Hmm.
So we're 16, 17, probably about to get into our exams and whatnot, and boom, COVID hits. We're all
Yeah.
in lockdown, we're all at home, we can't go to school, we can't see our friends, we can't even go outside really. And you kind of, because humans are social creatures, when we're in isolation for too long, it's that it tends to get really bad with our mental health,
Yeah.
right? So how do you flip the situation in your mind and use what you can control, your daily habits and your daily actions, to overcome or make that bad situation turn into a good one?
Mhm. One of the first things that comes to mind, probably to flip that script or to flip the switch, so to speak, one of the first things that comes to mind is probably is first realizing, hey, this situation isn't happening. All right, I'm gonna use a quote from somebody that I look up to. There's this gentleman I admire that, and I really love him. And he has this quote where he says, "Nothing in life happens to you; rather, things in life only happen for you." In other words,
Mm.
the situation or the challenge that you are facing in your life, in this example, COVID, we must realize, hey, this challenge is simply an opportunity for growth. This challenge is simply an opportunity for change. So, first, changing the perspective or to flip the script, we have to realize, hey, this is actually for our advantage. This is actually for our development. This isn't something that is here to maybe hold us down or hold us back. No, there's an opportunity within this challenge or within this chaos. Now, the next thing I must say to myself, well, what is the opportunity that I can find within this situation?
Yeah, no, I that is actually so incredibly impactful because I think you can always essentially find a positive in the negative and change your mindsets to turn that situation, that obstacle into an opportunity, where you flip the script, like you said, and try and see it as an opportunity for growth.
Yeah, and if I can add in something here, I was reading a book
Please.
recently by John Matt. So I don't know if you know who he is, but he has this book, and this is the book I'm reading now, is entitled "Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn." And in this book, he says is like at the end of the day, we have to take full responsibility for ourselves. And when we take full responsibility for ourselves, we realize, hey, the ball is within my court. The ball is within our court. What is the opportunity I'm going to find from this adversity? Is like how I see it, like an opportunity is like treasure. Is like hidden treasure. You have to go and find it. And as Tony Robbins always says, where focus goes, energy flows. So
Right.
at the end of the day, where I'm looking, where my focus is directed to, if I'm focusing on the challenge, that's the thing that's going to be magnified in my life. But if I'm looking for the opportunity now, that's what I'm going to find. So yeah.
No, I love that. I feel like I'm gonna keep that in my back pocket all the time because that was just, yeah, I love it. So it's just such an amazing way to look at things. Whatever your focus lies on is what advances and what maximizes. Like you
Correct.
said, so if you're focusing on the fact that, I don't know, any challenge, I can't think of one right now, but if you focus on any challenge and your focus is on that, then
Mm.
that challenge is going to grow, not just in your mind, but also in your life. And whatever, it's
Yes.
kind of whatever you put your energy to is what
Will
will
magnify.
grow. Exactly,
Yeah.
what will magnify. I love that. So, finding purpose in your 20s, I think, is probably one that I think is something that every 20 something year old struggles with. People outside of their 20s as well, just finding purpose in life, I think, is a big thing. And in your work, your books, your speeches, everything, you talk a lot about creating a life that you envision and creating a life that you design. But how do you go about doing that? How do you, especially when you might not know what your purpose is, you might feel a
Mm.
bit aimless, you might not know what you want to do in life. How do you create that life that you envision?
What I will probably say is first take time to get to know you. And I'm gonna dive into this a little bit more. But first, take time to get to know you. And what I mean by that is, first, you have to get clear on what it is you want out of life. It's not what mommy wants out of life, what daddy wants out of life, what your best friend wants out of life. No, you have to know first what you want out of life and what is the change, what is the impact that you would like to see happen in the world. So what I would probably say the first thing is get clarity. Get clear on first who you are and what it is you want out of life. Because I feel one of the main challenges for persons is they're not clear on what really they want. What they're not clear on their vision. So just a quick story. So a couple, this was probably earlier in May of this year. I was speaking at a school and I basically told the children like, hey, imagine what would the best version of yourselves look like. And I saw the expressions on the faces of the children within the room, and I realized, and even when I got some of them to stand up and to answer, I could tell that a lot of them weren't really sure what that best version of themselves looked like. So my take on it is like get clear. I think it was Napoleon Hill who said in Think and Grow Rich, and I think also Oprah Winfrey also mentioned it in one of her speeches, is like one of the main challenges which people face is they're not clear on what it is they want out of life. So if I don't have a clear vision, then it's like I'll be stuck. If I don't know what it is that I want out of life, then it's like I will always feel like I'm I don't have any direction. I would say the first thing, get to know who you are. Spend some time with you. You know, like how people might say, well, date other people. How I would put it, date yourself. Get to know who you are, what you want. And then the next thing I will probably say is get to know what it is that you will need to do in order to reach that desired vision. So yes, it's good to get clarity on what it is you want, but now you must go a step further and you must ask yourself, well, what will it require of me to get to the place or become the person that I want to be. So you must ask yourself, well, what sacrifices will I have to make? What new habits must I develop? All those things. And what must I release? I have this goal, and I firmly believe this. In order for you to increase the higher levels, there are certain things you must release at this current level. It
Wow.
doesn't mean that things that it doesn't always mean that what you're letting go of is always negative, but
Mhm.
sometimes what got you from point A to where you are now is not what is going to take you from where you are now to where you want to be. So
Right.
so sometimes if you want to grow, so if you want to increase the new level, there are certain things you must release at this current level. So that's the second thing. I will probably say a third thing. You should probably I will encourage your audience to ask yourself the question, well, what people, what resources, what gifts, what talents, what things do I already have within my possession or within my reach that can be used as a vehicle to take me closer to that desired vision. So in other words, to put it in simple terms, take inventory of the resources or the talents or the gifts that you already have, because those are things that will help you along your journey. And then I will probably say, after you get clear, so a quick recap, after you get clear on what it is you want, after you ask yourself the question, well, what will it require of me to get to that desired vision? After you have taken inventory of the talents, the gifts, the people, the resources in your life, then the last thing you will have to do is make a decision. Now, allow me to define the word decision. There's a difference between making a decision and making a choice. If I make a choice, I can say, okay, I will do this. So if you're making a choice, it means you have multiple options, and you could choose one. And if that doesn't work out, you will piggyback and you will go to the next thing or try something else. When you make a decision, though, is like you're cutting off all other options. It's like I'm either all in or I'm out. So
Yeah.
it's like you have to make a decision. Like after you get clear on what it is you want, you have to make a decision no matter what. Hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to go all in. Or as Napoleon Hill would say, you got to burn the ships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I was here taking notes of like everything, all of those steps, because the way that I am literally gonna like lay these out as tips for everyone listening and the people who might have missed this episode, because that's so incredibly valuable, like literal steps to figure
Yeah.
out exactly how to get to your purpose, defeat that aimlessness, that indecisiveness. And I think another thing that is really prominent in just our lives, I was gonna say for people in their 20s, but really and truly for everyone, is comparison. I think we're
Mm,
definitely in the age. I mean, with the age of social media and everything, we can see people's lives all the time, you know?
yeah.
And it's so hard to not compare yourself nowadays. So, how
Mhm.
do you, in a time where you're trying to get to know yourself, you're trying to make decisions and figure out what to release and date yourself and figure out your purpose, how do you do that without your mindset being sullied by what you think you should be doing based off
Mm.
of what you're seeing other people might be doing in their own lives?
Well, I think before we can answer that question, how do we defeat comparison? I think the first thing we must ask is, well, why do we compare as human beings? I think
Mm,
that's a fair question that we should ask in order for us to know how to address it. I will probably say one of the reasons, I don't know if it's the main one, but one of the reasons why we compare ourselves to others is because one, we either feel inadequate, so it's like we don't know who we truly are. And then I think another reason why we may compare ourselves is because oftentimes we think we should be further, and we are looking at other people who may seem to be further along in their journey. And it's because we are focusing outwardly, is almost as if it takes the attention or the focus away from knowing who you are.
right.
So I think one of the ways to address this whole comparison issue or this challenge of comparing ourselves is first getting confident in who you are. And to get confident in who you are, you must take time. I guess it goes back to what
Right
we were
back to
saying
the same
before.
thing you said before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
spending some time with you. And as I said not too long, that takes time.
Mm,
That it isn't something that happens overnight. It isn't something that happens in one day and boom, I am confident in who I am. No, it takes time. So I think being willing to go through the process of, hey, focusing on what it is I want. What who am I? Who am I created to be? And I know I wasn't planning on going here originally in my talk, but I personally believe as I said before, everyone has their own belief. But for me, how I was able to find my identity was first going back to my creator. That was for me.
Yeah.
And the reason this is so important, and I don't want your audience to miss this. Identity first comes from identity and purpose. I'm gonna put it this way: identity and purpose first comes from the one who created you. The created thing can never say to its creator why it was created or who am I. I'm gonna give you a perfect analogy. If we think of the creators of the airplane, the Wright brothers. I think that's who they were. If
Yeah.
we think
Yeah.
of the creators of the airplane, we went or someone went to the creators of the airplane and said, "Hey, look, this airplane is meant for sailing on the ocean or for driving on the streets." I'm sure they will probably look at you and say, "What silliness is this? What are you talking about?" or think, for example, if we went to the creator of the computer and we said to them that the purpose of this computer is to cut lunch on, you would think, "What craziness is this? Why?" Because you can never say what the purpose of a thing without first going to its creator. And I'm gonna take this even deeper. If we look at, and let me say this, everything in life was created for a purpose. So you
Yeah.
right now already have purpose on your life. Even if you may not feel so, you already have purpose. So as I said, I'm going to take that analogy a little bit deeper. So if we look at this computer that you're looking at right now, if we look at it, and there are so many different computers, but for me, what I have is an HP computer, an HP desktop. If we will realize there's an image or there's a logo on this computer. No, here's what I want you to understand is like every created thing has an imprint on it from its creator. That's how I'm able to tell you what's the difference between an HP computer, a Lenovo computer, or some other computer. Why? Because there's an imprint from its creator on it. The same thing is true with us. An aspect, regardless of what religion anyone believes in, at the end of the day, is like almost every religion teaches this, that look, an aspect of your creator is within you. So, how do you find identity and how do you find purpose? You go back to the source. You can never
Wow.
know fully who you are without first knowing who your creator is.
Wow.
That's my take
That
on it.
is That is insane. I've never heard anybody describe it or explain something like that, but that just like illuminated my mind. That was insane. No, because it makes so much sense. And I love how simply you explained it with just the comparison to, a computer or the Wright brothers in their plane and going back to the source and figuring out. I think that's why probably people say that life is kind of a journey of discovery because you're
Yes.
just discovering what your purpose is, discovering what the imprint from your creator might be. And
Mhm.
I think there's such a power in that. Even if you aren't, now I'm just like, all of these thoughts are coming into my mind because of this. Even if you don't believe in any religion, you're atheist, agnostic, whatever, even with just your parents, you can kind of go back to the source of where you were created and
Correct.
try and see, okay, what aspects of myself might I see through my parents, or might I get or learn about myself through my parents, and that could even guide you to your purpose and understanding yourself better. So there's just so many
Sure.
ways that that could be taken, and I love
Yeah.
that so much. So I think a lot of times when we look at inspirational stuff, or you see those quotes and everything on Pinterest, and everything is just all like rainbows and roses and stuff like that. But what about when things don't go as planned?
Mm.
You might have a vision for life, you know who you are, you're determined, you're making decisions, you're driven and willing to do what it takes, and then you face a major setback and it sends you straight back into that self-doubt, that comparison, that negative mindset. How do you handle that?
Hmm. How you handle it, my take on it. We must all learn to be flexible. So one of the things that I wrote in my upcoming book, Transform Your Life, and I also say this to people. It's good and it is important to have a vision for your life. But I tell people, and I've come to learn this, do not idolize the vision. So it's good to have a vision. It's important to have a vision, but do not idolize the vision. Now, let me break this down. I'm sure we've all heard people, and I have fallen into this trap when I was younger. We have all heard people say, well, I want to be married by this age, whether it's 25. I want to
Yeah.
do, I want to do this, the next, and the third. I want to have this house by age 30 and XYZ and the third. However, the reality is, as much as we may have a vision, and it's important to have a vision, things do not always go to plan. And that's why we must learn to be flexible. The reality of life is there will be setbacks. There are no two questions about it. There will be setbacks, there will be challenges, there will be things that show up in your life that you did not plan for. But you
Yeah.
must learn to be flexible along the way. If you idolize the vision, then you will find difficulty when those setbacks come. And I firmly believe this. Just because there's a detour along the way, or just because there's a delay, so to speak, it doesn't mean that your vision is denied. I'm gonna say that again. Just because there is a detour, or just because there is a delay, it doesn't mean that your vision is denied.
I love that.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes the thing about life is you will face a detour along the way. But sometimes the reality is those detours come our way to help us to realize or to learn something new about ourselves. So I'm gonna give you a perfect example. So when I was younger, if you were to ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I don't care who you were, I was going to tell you my dream, and still to this day, it still is, and I still will pursue it someday. But if you were to ask me before what was my dream, I would tell you my dream was to become a pilot.
Mm.
That was my dream from time I was young. I loved airplanes. But when I was coming to the end of my years at school, and pretty much like that was, as I said before, that was when COVID came around. I had to take a detour. I always thought I had this plan or this grand idea in my mind that once I finish secondary school, I'm gonna go to a school overseas, I'm gonna go to a college overseas, and I'm going to study aviation and life is going to be set. No. Life had its own plans. And also at the time, not only because of COVID, but also because my household did not have the funds or the resources at that time for me to go overseas to study aviation. I somehow end up studying what I am studying today, which is youth development work. Now, if you were to ask me when I was younger, if I'll be going to college studying youth development work, if you were to ask me when I was younger that I'll be standing on stages in front of people talking, if you were to ask me when I was younger that I'll be writing books, I would probably tell you, you must be crazy. You must be out of this world. Because, as I said, my dream was always to be a pilot. And eventually, I do believe, eventually, when the time is right, I will still pursue that dream.
Yeah.
However, I had to take a detour and I had to learn to be flexible along the way. And the reality is, if we are going to navigate through detours successfully, we must learn to be flexible. And if I could give you another analogy, and I really love this. I love this analogy. It's so perfect for what we're discussing here today. So when I was in secondary school, I was in this organization called the Barbados Cadet Corps. I was an instructor in the Barbados Cadet Corps. Now, for your listeners who may not know what that is, or who may not have a clue what that is, to put it in simple terms, the Barbados Cadet Corps is basically like a military, but for
Yeah.
teenagers.
Yeah,
So
that's actually a great way to explain it.
right. That's the simplest way I can put it. So one of the things we were able to learn in cadets was how to shoot rifles. And there was such a profound lesson that I learned from shooting rifles. I never thought that I would have learned a lesson from that. But anyways, so one of the things I learned, and it ties back into what we were discussing earlier, is like there are always things beyond your control. So when you're shooting a rifle, and for if your audience, if anybody in your audience has ever had the necessary military training or has ever done some level of training using rifles, you they would understand that no matter how skilled you are, you will never at all points hit bullseye. So to speak, put it in another way, no matter how skilled you are, you will never at any point always hit the dead center of a target. You
Right.
and yes, you may hit the center of it once or two times in a row or maybe three times, but not every single time. Why? Because there are always variables around that you don't have control over. One of the things I learned when shooting rifles is that there's the strength of the wind can cause a bullet to deviate. The direction of the wind, the type of land you're on, the slope of the land, all of that can impact whether the bullet hits bullseye or not. And the same thing is true in our lives. Our vision is like the target that we are aiming towards. Our vision is like the thing that we are working towards, but there will always be things around us beyond our control that we will never have 100% control over. So,
Yeah.
what do we have to do? We may have to adjust our position. We may have to learn to be a little bit more flexible. And as I said before, just because your vision has been delayed or has been deterred, it doesn't mean it is denied. So
That
that's
is
my
just
take on
brilliant. That is just brilliant. Oh, it's just, yeah. I think people are gonna love this.
and if I could add in a little, another
Go
idea
ahead.
just came to mind, and this will conclude that question for me. The interesting thing about having a vision, the interesting thing about vision only tells you where you would like to go. Vision only tells you what you're aiming towards. Vision does not tell you how you will get there or what you will face along the way. The vision only tells you where I'm aiming towards and how I'm what it basically tells you like what I'm striving towards, but it does not tell you the challenges you're going to face along the way. It doesn't tell you how you will get there. So sometimes you might think having the vision and to get from where you are to where you want to be is going to be a straight road. But sometimes you might have to go north, you might have to go east, you might have to go west before you get to south. And that's the reality.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You are just so incredibly correct. And I think it's really important for people to kind of just understand that, because a lot of times I think you're right, but at the start you said that people idolize the vision,
Mhm.
and so many people do that, especially now because people are trying to plan out their lives and figure out what they want and everything, and they get a little too into the planning. They get a little too much, figuring out, laying out the purpose of what they
Mhm.
want. And then they create this like picture perfect plan of what they want. And then if there's any deviation, it shatters them,
Mhm.
Because I think you and I had similar experiences with probably the disappointment with the school thing, because I had never planned to go to UE, the University of the West Indies, for those who don't know. Because I think a lot of people, especially in the Caribbean, have this big idolized dream of going overseas and going to
Mhm.
school and stuff. And a lot of times there's so many setbacks, whether it's, immigration. And a lot of times, I mean, for both you and I, it was the financial hold, which tends to be a big one for many people.
Yeah.
And so that I remember when I first had that experience, and because I had applied to all the schools and everything. I probably applied to like seven different schools, got into a few of them, and then I was so excited to go.
Mhm.
And then the financial realities hit,
Yeah.
and my mindset was like, oh, it was like a blow. You feel like just sunken down to the ground, and the reality of that. Oh, I have to go to school here, less than a mile from the school that I was just at. And so there's not much. The roses and like newness of everything isn't there,
Mhm.
and it's that idolized vision
Mhm.
is now destroyed, and you have to kind of pick yourself back up and figure out how to pivot, figure out how to create, like you said, a purpose driven life, and still be happy and still feel fulfilled in your life with what you already have, and just be flexible. And I think it's actually probably a really good thing for people to have their idolized vision shattered a little bit, because it makes you stronger, it makes you be
Yes.
more flexible.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a valuable thing in this life.
Yeah, and to even add on that, the reality, and I can't remember if I mentioned this before, but you when you face a detour in life, you often discover something about yourself that you may not have
Yeah.
previously known.
Yeah.
You may discover a new identity, or you may discover a new version of yourself that had you just gone the straight road,
You would have
you would
never
not have.
known.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because both, I think for both of us, we definitely, I found, I don't think I would have been a climate activist or had the opportunities that I had if I had gone overseas. I wouldn't have probably started a podcast or done any of the things that I'm doing now. I've had so many different detours, and so have you. And it's just kind of brought us to the point that we're in now. And I think that that's
Yeah.
just such a valuable thing.
And I'm
So,
sure, sorry to cross you, but I'm
no,
sure,
go ahead.
yeah, I'm sure that you enjoy what you're doing now too.
Yeah,
So sometimes
absolutely.
the reality is life may take you, yes, on a detour, but the scenery that you may see, oh, this is good.
Mm.
The scenery that,
Yeah.
that you may see along the way might be way better than had you gone your own way.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's the
you're
reality.
so right. You're so, so right. Oh my gosh, people are going to love this. Is so valuable for the listeners. I'm so happy about it.
Yeah.
Okay, you've definitely spoken on the topic of developing the world changer in you, which I think is something that stood out to me when I was, stalking you a little bit and doing all my research on you. So, how does living that, like we said for this whole episode, that purpose driven life in your 20s specifically contribute to not just personal success, but
Hmm.
also making a positive impact on the world?
Hmm. I would say when a person truly lives a purpose driven life, they start to realize that life is much bigger than just themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that again. When a person
Please.
truly lives a purpose driven life, they realize that life is much bigger than themselves. The reality is, and it doesn't matter who you are, at the end of the day, we all want to contribute to something much bigger than ourselves. And let me prove it. Even for persons that may be doing a job that they do not like, they may be frustrated. If we look at the core of it, we would see that they still show up at the job. Why? Because they want to contribute to their families. So, in other
Mm.
words, they want to contribute to someone other than themselves. So when we live a purpose-driven life, when we become the persons that we were called to be, we are actually serving the world. When we become who we were made to be, we are actually making a difference in the lives of someone else. There was a quote that I heard, and it was actually in a speech by Denzel Washington. I love this. This is like an amazing quote. I remember when I first heard this speech back when I was doing my CAPA examinations. It was a quote from Denzel Washington. He said this: "Do not aspire to make a living, aspire to make a difference."
Mm, yes. Yes. I'm using that. I'm so stealing that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That when I heard that, I went like that was such an amazing quote. He said, "Do not aspire to make a living, aspire to make a difference." So to your question, when we live a purpose-driven life, we recognize our need to contribute to the lives of others. From you, Naomi, creating this podcast, you are serving others. You are serving your audience. By persons building a building or creating a home, they are serving others. They are contributing to others. So whatever your creative ability is, by you stepping into that thing, you are actually serving the world. So, to answer your question in simple terms, to live a purpose driven life, it actually means to live a life of service to others.
Wow. That is amazing. And it just is so true. I hope people are watching for the people who are watching the video on YouTube, I hope you're seeing like how every single statement that Kristen says just hits me. And it's like, ugh, I can't even, like, I have to show it through my facial expressions because I can't even verbalize how it feels to be listening to this. But yeah, absolutely. That is such an interesting way of looking at it. And I think it just is incredibly true that when you're doing what you are meant to do, or when you're doing at least something that you enjoy, you contribute so much more to the wider community and to whatever is bigger than you, like you said.
Yes.
And I think one thing that I always say is when it comes to climate activism or sustainability or equality or social justice, you don't need to be an activist standing up on the stage with a megaphone. You don't need to be a motivational speaker. You don't need to be doing all of these big things. You just need to be doing what's right for you
Mm.
and doing enough to be giving back to somebody in some certain way. So whether it's just through small actions, like if we focus on the sustainability thread, just the simple things that we're told about every day, bringing a reusable bag, teaching somebody about something that they might have been ignorant on before. And then when you're doing just everyday jobs, like let's say you're a cashier, you're still contributing to every single person that comes into your space. You might uplift somebody through a smile that you or a story that you share with them or something. There's so many different ways I think that people
Mm.
can uplift and contribute and make life much better in ways that they tend to overlook so much, which is why I'm so happy that you shed light on that.
You said something just now that sparked another idea in my mind.
Yeah.
We often think that purpose is something to be pursued. I do not
Mm.
believe that purpose is something to be pursued. I believe purpose is something you already have. You just have to
Mm.
acknowledge it, accept it, and yield yourself to it. So a lot of people think that purpose is some big grand thing, that I must be doing this mighty amazing thing in the world. Whether, as you said, is being on a stage, or whether it is that you are a climate activist doing some great and grand thing. But the reality is there's purpose for all of us right where we are planted. And the truth
Yeah.
is, we often think, well, we have to get to the next season of life in order to find purpose. I can't, we often say, well, I can't wait till I get married, or I can't wait till I get that dream job. I can't wait to do this other thing. However, the reality is there's purpose for you right where you are, right where you have been planted.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. And I love that you said that to them. And I really hope that people really listen and internalize that. So, Kristen, now I'm going to hand over to you for any last words because I think this has been just so enriching. And what would you say as your last words to our loyal listeners right now?
What I would say, I think it will go back to our quote. And I will say this to your listeners: your circumstances do not determine your destiny. Where you are right now, yes, I'm sure that, yes, where you are right now may be painful. Yes, it may not be what you envision for yourself. Yes, you may be in a season of your life where it feels like disruption is happening. But I'm here to tell you, it doesn't determine your destiny. It doesn't get to determine how far you can go in your life. At the end of the day, you are the only one who gets to make the ultimate decision how far you go. And what creates that future? Your daily decisions. Your future will be a reflection of the decisions you make today. So choose today to live a purpose driven life, a life of your design. Because guess what? You are worth it, and you deserve to become everything that you have been called to be. Those are my words.
Amazing. This has to be one of my favorite episodes for sure, without a doubt. Without a doubt. This has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so, so, so much, Kristen, for
Thank you
joining
as
us on the
well.
podcast today. Of course, it has been an absolute honor to have you. And now we go into all of the boring stuff. Well, no, not my boring stuff yet. First off, Kristen, where can people find you?
Ooh. So persons can find me on Instagram. That's mainly where I am. My Instagram is the number one, KRIS inspires. So one Chris inspires. That is where you can find me on Instagram. You can also find me on my website, www.chrisinspires.com. That is KRIS inspires.com. And you can find me almost anywhere. You can find me on YouTube, Kristen Greaves. You can find me on Facebook, Kristen Greaves. And yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, for those of you who are wondering, you want to go check out all of Kristen's stuff, I will definitely link his website and everything down in the show notes. So please go check those out. And then also look out for his upcoming book, Transform Your Life. It's time to take your life to the next level. I love that. It's just perfect and perfectly encapsulates everything that we talked about today. And I can't wait for it to come out. So please look out for that. And if you enjoyed the Notes and Quotes podcast, please go check us out on the socials as well. We are on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube. Notes and Quotes podcast for the LinkedIn and the YouTube, and Notes and Quotes pod for the Instagram and TikTok. And if you're curious about me, you can check me out at Naomi A. Cambridge on Instagram. So, with that, that is all we have for today, guys. I loved this conversation. I am literally going to go just like debrief all of this information and like just cement it into my mind and probably listen back to this when I'm feeling crappy one day. This is amazing. So thank you so much once again, Kristen. And
Thank
thank
you.
you to everyone that has been listening. See you next Tuesday.